Aloha and welcome to our video on running water. In this video, we'll explain how the water cycle circulates earth water. We'll describe the ability of a stream to erode and transport material. We'll compare and contrast the changes in gradient and discharge between a stream's headwater and mouth. And finally, we'll describe what base level is. Okay, to begin, let's take a look at the water cycle. And the water cycle is the pathway that water takes over the surface and sometimes below the surface of our planet. It's kind of that pathway of fresh water. Now, most water is going to start in a bank, and the biggest bank we have is going to be the oceans, and this is just an area for storage. From there, we see that it evaporates out up into the atmosphere, and as it does so and gets cooler the higher it goes, we get condensation, and condensation is going to form clouds, and those clouds are going to continue to build, and if they get too much water inside of the clouds, then we see what we call precipitation, and that's water falling from these clouds. Now there's four types of precipitation: rain, snow, sleet, and hail, and that gets it from the atmosphere back out and down. Once it gets to the surface, it has two different pathways. It can run over the surface, which we call surface runoff, or it can permeate through into and become groundwater, and then this groundwater can then flow as well back to the ocean or back to the bank. Now, one of the other ways that we kind of see that we don't talk about too much is this transpiration, and that's going to be that water that's released from plants. So you can see that we have all this water on the ground or trapped in plants. It'll evaporate or transpirate into the atmosphere. From there, it precipitates down, and the whole cycle continues, and that's why we call it a water cycle. Okay, so this unit's going to talk about how streams and moving water have the ability to move stuff. And we talk about it as being streams, as this moving water, because that's where the concentration of most of the moving water is. While we do have some erosion from this rain and runoff and from snowmelt, most of it's going to travel into streams. When it gets into the streams, then you have a stronger force that's able to move more sediment, move more materials. And there's a couple things that affect stream flow. The shape of the stream is going to affect it. If we take a look at this one here, we'll notice it's a straight stream flowing down. You can see the maximum velocity is here, and you kind of have a uniform as it spreads out. So it's kind of like equally as the further you get from that high point. If we have a bend in the bank here, where you can see this bend here, then what we notice is that the maximum velocity is still kind of in the same location, but we notice that it's kind of going to be a little more speedy on the outside of the bend, and that's going to cause a little more erosion on that side of the stream. Now, a couple other things that are going to affect stream flow and how fast it's going would be the characteristics of the channel. And that's quite simply, what's the bottom like? Is it going to be a smooth bottom like you see in the pictures? Then you're going to get nice, even stream flow. Versus if there's a lot of big boulders and things down here, then you're going to see it's going to have to move its way around there. Is it natural? Is it going to be dirt, rocks, sand, or is it going to be concrete? Concrete's going to flow a little faster, but there's less erosion on that concrete because it's a man-made surface. Also, how steep it is. You'll notice that in the mountains here, we'll see it's a lot steeper than it is here down on the plains. So we can see that that's going to affect steam flow, and that'll ultimately also affect how much it's going to erode and how much it's going to carry stuff away. Discharge would be how big it is, and then we already mentioned urbanization. So stream flow is going to determine how much it can erode away and how much it can carry away, and that's one thing that I want you to keep in mind as you're going through the lessons. Now, there's significant changes from being upstream and downstream. Upstream is what we call the headwaters, and that's where the streams form. At the headwaters, we tend to have this high gradient, so it tends to be steep, but we're going to have a little bit of water in there. So you're only getting a little bit of this water formation, so you're going to have a little bit of water traveling downhill really quickly. Conversely, when we get to the mouth of the stream, or the downstream part, then what we notice is that this gradient is kind of leveled off a little bit. So if we drew a profile, we'd start in the mountains, and then it kind of levels off as it goes down into the ocean. So you can see that the steep gradient here in the headwaters is going to allow that water to appear to be moving really fast, whereas down here you have a very slight gradient, a very gentle gradient going there, but we generally will have more water in those down here closer to the mouth, because if you look here, you can see all of these little tributaries that are all feeding into this one stream or river right there. Okay, the last concept that they want to go through in this unit is going to talk about base level. And base level is quite simply where it's going to be, the deepest that that stream can cut through. When you have a new stream cutting through, you're going to see that it's going to be cutting through deep valleys here, very V-shaped valleys going on here, and the base level is going to be down here. For most streams, the base level is going to be the ocean. It's going to be sea level because once water gets down there, it's in the ocean. You can't have it dip down below and then flow uphill. Water always flows downhill, and the lowest it can flow would be sea level. Now, for some streams, it might be a little bit higher than sea level if it's flowing down into, let's say, a lake, for instance. Then as it's flowing in that lake, it might be another stream coming down on the other side that would take us down to sea level. But base level is quite simply the lowest level of that stream. Okay, well that's it for the video. As always, good luck in the lessons, and we'll see you in the next video.